Hey everybody. All right, so wow, different transitions. This move too. Everything's whoops. That should not be there. Oh, that's why. Name. Oh, I was playing with transitions earlier. I forgot. And then I can fade that out too. Let me actually select that, move that down there. All right. So tonight I wanted to talk about tutorials and Next.js and some of the tutorials that I've seen and some of the tutorials that are just horrible. Uh, I'm going to talk about the positive ones because, well, they are actually really good and a great way to. Here, let me actually go. Yeah, this is great. And then make sure that those are the tutorials that people are going through. Uh, this one is my favorite, and I am going to. Great. And I will start with the first one that I have always enjoyed. All right, so there's a lot of tutorials out there. You can learn a bunch of things. People are even coming to YouTube to actually learn different things, which is fine. And what's really interesting about a lot of the tutorials I've seen is they will get you to a certain place and they will actually teach you what they want to teach you, not necessarily what you want to accomplish. And that's one of the reasons that when I taught at General Assembly, I was able to actually teach people real skills that were actually really helpful. I'm a huge fan of General Assembly because they were actually building a project that was meaningful to them, potentially that they could actually go on and build something. We would do hackathons throughout the course too, which was really great. We would do a weekend and we would just build something. And it would be more valuable than just going through the steps of cutting and pasting somebody else's code. So, without further ado, let me start with the first one, and hands down my favorite tutorial ever. Um, this is Miguel. He created the Flask Mega Tutorial. What is Flask? Flask is a Python web library or framework. And it is, wow, he's even updated it for 2024. That is one of my concerns about most tutorials. They are not kept up to date. Uh, this one is up to date as of 2024. And you can see the level of detail that he has gone into in regards to that with things like hello world, templates, web forms, databases, user logins, profile pages, and then even localization, full text search, and then actually some of the fun stuff later on. He did a full facelift. My only concern with this one is he does the facelift in chapter 11, which redesigns, actually, it was chapter 15, a better application structure, which he redesigns the entire application that you've already built. However, that is what a lot of people do when they're building applications, right? You'll figure out a better way to do something, you'll actually move into a new form, and then you'll change your code base and you're like, oh, I got to refactor this. And that's what he actually did in the tutorial, which is actually kind of funny. uh, Another great tutorial, Three.js Journey. For those who haven't played with Bruno's website, it is so much fun, and I'm just going to give you a little example. And this is actually being controlled by my cursor, and I can come up here and you can actually look at it and rotate it and do all sorts of fun things. But this is all done on Three.js, and you can see the different levels and the core structure over here. WebGL, Three.js, going live, all the way to level 3. I think these even got Oh, he did a new shaders one. I forgot this is new. So he's done a new shaders, 26 hours of tutorials by him. And then dun da da post processing performance tips. Like he keeps on building on this, keeps on providing new versions of this, and goes deep into what you can do. He actually, where's React? Was it in level 4? He did a thing for React. This is all for shaders. Physics, custom blender. Yeah, I don't even know where it is now. But he did a full thing on React Fiber and how to build on that and how to actually migrate what you've currently done and the advantages of using it. And he actually goes in deep of how to actually do 3D things. He's really the best out there for Three.js. Really cool, worth its weight in gold if you're doing any type of Three.js work. Highly recommended. And then the last one I want to cover, which is what I've been playing with over the past weekend, is Next.js. Next.js is great. Next.js is a framework built on top of React. So it's a framework on a framework. And it allows you to do so many different things, and it has a great tutorial. However, these are the problems I have with tutorials. And I'm just going to get into it. So with this tutorial, it's kind of interesting because this tutorial isn't up to date. It actually has different structures. It forces you down a database path that you actually use Vercel. It gives you other options that you potentially could go investigate on your own, but it doesn't teach you that. It also starts with a structure that you probably won't use in production. Why do I know that? Let me show you. So if I go back to here, and you can go through this and overview, styling, data fetching, how to set up a database on Vercel, right? So you're setting up a database on their host. Searching pagination, that's fine. But the data fetching is the one that really bothered me. And I'll just jump through this pretty quickly. But when I get to data fetching, oh, and it uses Tailwind, which is fine for some people. I'd rather not use all of those things and kind of keep it simple while you're doing things. When you start using so many third parties to actually do a tutorial, are you really teaching them what they want to learn, or are you teaching them a tutorial? Right? And it's really annoying. Here's a data structure, and it uses a regular routing structure that you're probably familiar with, but they originally have a page router and they have an app router now, and now you need to address those different concerns. So they have different versions of this, and this tutorial should get updated, but it's not. Navigating between pages, it talks about the next link and using those components. That's not what I wanted. Setting up your database. Yeah. So this is all basically setting it up on their system. It's fine. Executing queries, how to do some basic SQL, which is fine. This is what bothers me. Choosing how to fetch data. And let's look at this. APIs are an intermediate layer between your application code and database. And there's few cases where you might use an API. That is incorrect. There is not a few cases. There is almost all cases that you'll use an API to do any type of data work unless you're doing a static website. If you're fetching data from the client, you want to have an API layer. This is a few case right here. If you're fetching data from the client and you want to have an API layer. So what they're saying, you would always serve your data from client server to server communication. The client can never access any data, or you do directly with database queries. Now, I want to talk a little bit about database queries, which is fine. So, database queries have their pros and cons, right? So, one of the advantages of database queries, they're really easy for quick access to data. You don't have to worry about authentication, or you don't have to worry about uh, building your schema and getting all of that set up. You can literally, you have a database, you can start doing select statements directly from the database. But you'll run into performance issues always. You're not caching things, you're not actually preparing for any type of scale, and you have zero security. And there's a lot of SQL injection that can happen. And there's so many bad reasons to not use direct SQL in your code. And then everyone's like, but what if I used a parameterized query? Well, sure, a parameterized query will do something. However, if you're writing SQL on your client, you're doing something wrong. And it's just insane of how many people actually do that. And I should I should start collecting those websites that I've come across, and I see these horrible websites, and they literally have their connection string on their client, and then they're making actual SQL calls directly from the client. I was like, probably not the best thing to have your connection string on the client. But to write database queries, it's really good for testing your database, making sure your data's there. Uh, for API testing, there's a lot of different tools out there. I'm a huge fan of Postman. I use Postman to actually do testing of APIs. There's another one called Insomnia. I heard of another one called Karate, which I've never used, but that was something I heard of today or yesterday. Anyway, the Insomnia and Postman are both great. Swagger's another one. Swagger's actually really good for building your own API and then actually being able to document it. Uh, Big fan of documentation in regards to APIs. How do you get an API adopted? You actually document it really well for the developers that are using it. Anyway, back to tutorials. In this tutorial, what was really interesting is it's actually writing direct queries to the database. And I'm like, should you really be doing that? And the answer is no, you shouldn't. Just let me call that out there. This is not production code. It's designed to be a tutorial. It's going to teach you something. But I think tutorials should be at least closer to reality. And the other thing that was really interesting about this one is it asks you to clone. Here, I'll go back to the very beginning. It actually asks you at the very beginning to get started. This is the start command. You're cloning their repo that they're already using for their tutorial. It's giving you so much that you will not have when you're actually doing a uh, real code, a production example of anything. And it has a starter example. So create next app at latest. Sure, that's great. This is the name of it. Great. Use npm. Fine. But this example and all of this coming in is crazy. Sure, it's a template. It's a way to get started. But if you're going to teach it, then teach it. Like, don't give them all the answers to start. Hey, I'm going to teach you about basic physics. And here is the entire answer guide of how to actually learn anything. But you're not learning anything. You're literally just filling out answers. And most people, I'm willing to bet, will go through these tutorials, cut and paste things, and then go, look, I'm a developer. And I was like, no, you're not, because you can copy and paste and you can go to Stack Overflows. And now you can go to Chat GPT and you can say, how do I dot, dot, dot. And you haven't learned anything. That's why I hate tutorials that give you too much to start. I want you to struggle because when you struggle, then you have to learn how to debug. You have to learn what reality is like when you're writing code. Drives me nuts. So, is this a decent tutorial? Sure. Do I like the database side of things and the fact that they recommend in few cases you might need an API layer? No. If you're doing any type of web application, you are going to need an API layer. Web application. Yeah, that's fair. If you're building a static website, Next.js is golden. It is amazing. You can host it on any site. You can literally do it on S3 for free. On AWS, you can actually host it on Firebase for free. I'm not picking or choosing any of the cloud providers. I don't really care. But they all have free tiers. There's actually, I think I talked about it in a previous one, about a list of all these free developer resources. And the free tiers for all of them, whether it be Firebase, Google, um, actually Firebase is Google now, AWS, Azure, any one of those. There's a lot of free tiers for you to actually do those kind of things. It's kind of fun. Anyway, so this is a tutorial to get started with Next.js, and I think it is a good way to get started, but don't think you know what you're doing by the end of it, because you don't. There's so many different things that you want to do. You should start with npx create next app at latest and give it a name, and all this other crap goes away. And then you start building. That's when you're actually building real code, and then you're starting from scratch. It's when you start from scratch and you actually are doing something from the ground up. That's when you start learning things because you're debugging. And debugging is pretty much the 90% of what engineers actually do in their day to day. We write new code probably 10% of the time, debug about 80% of the time, and hopefully the other 10% is spent doing admin stuff. But is that right, Matt? 80, 10, 10? Yeah. All right. So I am going to try something. Let me close this. I'm going to go into projects and my main directory demo. Great. Okay. So watch this. So now I'm here and I am going to do npm create next app, and I will call it, and I'll do the at latest just to make sure I'm running the latest, and I will call it Daemon just because that's what I always call it. And now it's going to ask me here. Let's see if I can do this. OBS file, preferences, hotkeys, filter, command shift. There it is. So it's this one. So here, let's do this. So now let's go through this. So then, great. Okay to proceed. And I will say yes. Would you like TypeScript? No, that's fine. ESLint. I'm going to take all the defaults. Tailwind, no. Source directory, yes. App router, yes. Would you like to customize? No. Great. I took all the defaults. I didn't change anything. This is the default of what a repo would look like in creating a new project. So now I will go into that directory and then I will open it. And here we go. So now I have this project. And let me get out of that zoom state. And I'll zoom it in over here. So now over here, you can see this is all it has. This is it. And if I open the source directory, this is it. Here's my page. And just from that alone, and I come down here and I do npm install. Whoops. And I do npm install. Great. And then npm run dev. And now I have that. So let's open that. And look, I actually have a working website. That's where tutorials should start. Just like that. And then what I generally do is I will actually come here and I'll find out what it's actually doing. So it's main and description. So this is actually getting passed in, just so you can see the styles main and description is getting passed in. So where is that coming from? That is probably coming from the layout, right? So there's the title and the description. Created by Next.js with JMan, right? So if I save that and I come back to the website, and you'll see my title. Oh, it didn't change. Oh, that's metadata. Sorry. Don't care about that. So now let's see where in the page where it's actually writing that out. Docs, learn, but I want the header. Oh, getting started right here. Right up here. So let's change this. And we will do with JMan. So now I save this and it shows up here, right? And I can change all of these. If I come down to the docs, I can do docs 2, right? And it will update real time. Great. So now we actually have working code. And now from here is where I would actually start building something. I don't know why people don't start from here. Like if you go back to Miguel's, like Miguel, amazing. You know what he started with? He started with Python. Literally, you haven't even installed Flask yet. That's it. You run Python and it just wants to make sure you have Python running. But he starts with doing a hello world at the very, very beginning, which is great. He shows you how to do virtual environments and all of that. And I would go into all of the stuff that Bruno does. His is a paid course, so I would highly recommend. There's an introduction for free, and so is Why Use or What Is, and then Why Use 3JS. Highly recommend doing these free courses, and you'll be like, wow, he's a great teacher. He goes into it in depth. Um, you'll get hooked and you'll want to do it. I'm just telling you. But this is the level of detail that you should start. Not, hey, clone my repo, type npm install and npm run dev, and look, you have a working application. That's not how it works. It's garbage. Drives me nuts. Anyway, that was my rant for the night. I've been going through a lot of tutorials and seeing what's out there and wanted to show you what to look for and what to be aware of. Stop using bad tutorials or stop finishing a tutorial, posting on LinkedIn that, look, I'm a certified developer because I went through a tutorial. No, you're not. You think you are because you have about that much knowledge. And that much knowledge is dangerous because then you start writing horrible code in production. But then you'll actually create more jobs for other engineers that actually know what they're doing. And then they come in and fix the garbage that you just got fired for. That's something to look into. Anyway, so I hope this was fun and entertaining, but that is all I want to talk about today. And I am going to go. So thanks for tuning in. I hope this was helpful, and let me know if you have any questions about tutorials. And if you have one you come across and you're like, oh, I have a great one, let me know. I'll take a look at it. I will be more than happy to review somebody's tutorial. All right. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.